Hello, namaste, welcome, good afternoon, everybody. I bow in deep reverence and gratitude for those of you joining me in the room, those of you joining me on Zoom, and those of you listening to the recording afterward. Welcome to Living from the Heart, a Dharma talk about this extraordinary journey of 18 inches, which can sometimes take many lifetimes simply to travel from the head to the heart. I like to start with a poem of my own as a lead-in to this week's topic. We'll follow with a short meditation to integrate what we've talked about. And finally, we'll save some time at the end for question and answer. And today's poem is called, Isn't It Wonderful? This is the earth. Sip slowly, breathe deeply, walk mindfully. Taste what you are eating. Feel the hand in yours, the rough edges we carry. This is the earth. The leaves turn light into sweetness. Mountains give veins. Oxygen reminds us this is the earth. Some are dying. Some are orgasming. Some children are learning violin. Others are digging in landfills for a shred of food or copper. Drop to your knees. Touch your cracked head to the sweet grass. This is the earth. The topic for this week is on longing to belong. And this is part 2 of this topic on our deeply rooted desire to love and be loved. In the first part of this talk, we talked about finding belonging right here and right now by coming home to our bodies, our hearts, our breath, and this dance of life. We also talked about the importance of finding connection in our Sangha, in our community. And today, I wanted to talk about finding our belonging on this earth and also with the divine. Because we are here on this planet at this point in time, in these bodies, to cultivate our love, to discover the power and expansiveness of love. And that means moving beyond the limited love for one other person at one time, and to cultivate a love for all sentient beings, which includes ourselves. We are also here to cultivate a wild love for this wild world and also tune into a divine love for all creation and for the Creator. D.H. Lawrence put it this way: "Oh, what a catastrophe, what a maiming of love when it was made personal, merely personal feeling. This is what is the matter with us. We are bleeding at the roots because we are cut off from the earth and sun and stars. Love has become a grinning mockery because, poor blossom, we plucked it from its stem on the tree of life and expected it to keep on blooming in our civilized vase on the table." This perspective reminds me of that famous quote: "If you like a flower, pluck it. If you love it, let it be," which speaks to this wild love that we must find for the wild world, a love that is not possessive, a love that does not destroy in its attempt to take and have for oneself. So The deepest human need is to love and be loved. And the deepest human suffering is a lack of love and the rejection and isolation that occurs when we don't have an experience of love in our lives. And this applies to our relationship with the earth. Not only do we not love the earth, but we don't recognize and see how the earth is loving us back all the time. So, in coming home and finding a sense of belonging, we also have to come home to this earth. There is a phrase: the universe approves of you. That is why you're here. The universe approves of you. That is why you are here. Your life is not an accident. You have a meaning and a purpose in this world. That is why you are here. So we see this connection to this living and breathing sentient earth in the story of the night the Buddha became enlightened. As the story goes, after a life of luxury, Prince Gautama left his palace to seek greater fulfillment than material wealth and gain, to seek freedom from suffering, from the sufferings of sickness, old age, and death. And first he tried the renunciate path, renunciating all pleasures and a fully embracing of the pain and suffering of life, eating a handful of rice as sustenance for the day, to stand on one leg, arms raised up, heart lifted, staring into the hot Punjabi sun. But the Buddha did not find enlightenment through the full rejection of pleasure in this world. So, not finding freedom from suffering in the embracing of pleasure or the full rejection of it, he decided to sit underneath the Bodhi tree and meditate until he was to find enlightenment. And while the Buddha was sitting underneath the Bodhi tree, he was visited by Mara, an evil demon who tried to tempt the Buddha back into this world. And the Buddha had already renounced the pleasures of this world. So all of the pleasures that Mara offered to him, he knew that they were ephemeral and not to last, and therefore could not be depended upon for a lasting feeling of peace and happiness. So then Mara did the opposite, threw him every demon and evil and jealousy and ill will, including the demon of self-doubt. And Mara asked the Buddha, "Who do you think you are?" So Mara is a very important figure in Buddhist legend, in Buddhist mythology. There is even the practice of Maranosati, the contemplation of a corpse at 9 stages of decomposition. Whenever you hear that word sati, you should think mindfulness, contemplation, concentration. The practice of anapanasati is just contemplation and mindfulness of the breath. So Maranasati is contemplation of our own death, of what happens at the end of our life, that we do in order to fully understand what we are to do while we are alive. So when Mara accused the Buddha of having a self-inflated ego, who does he think he is? The Buddha simply took his right hand and touched the ground. And he said, "I see you, Mara." This is the extremely powerful practice of bearing witness. And there are 2 key interpretations of this story. The first is on a personal level, and the second is on an earth level. So the practice of bearing witness is key to our own meditation and mindfulness practice. As we sit, as we breathe, we are here to practice being the witness to practice being the observer, to notice the passing stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensations, and not get so caught up in them. Much of our suffering and turbulence in our life is our attempts to stop and redirect the passing stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Another way to interpret what it means to bear witness to our own experience is if you were seeing a movie and you're watching the movie and fully captivated by the drama that is on screen. But bearing witness is not getting caught up so much in the drama, but standing up, turning around, and seeing the drama for what it is. It's a show. It is a fiction. It is not true reality. So that is another way we can cultivate being the witness, being the observer of our own inner experience. But we mustn't forget the very important symbology of the Buddha with his right hand touching the earth. This has become an infamous mudra. This is known as the Bhumish Parsha mudra, where the left hand is facing up in one's lap and the right hand is touching the earth. So one way to interpret this story is the Buddha is becoming his own witness. But another very important interpretation is to recognize the Buddha was calling upon the earth to bear witness. So even in Hindu mythology, there are different gods representing different elements of this world. We have the rain god, Indra, the wind god, Vayu. Perhaps you too have heard of the Vayus. We have the fire goddess, Agni, and the earth goddess, Bhumi, hence Bhumish Parsha Mudra. This is a reference to the earth goddess, Bhumi. So it's so easy to reduce our spiritual and meditative practice to a simple mental exercise and to say that the Buddha simply disciplined his mind to get in touch with this reality as it is. But we don't need to ignore every other element of this story. Here we have the Buddha sitting in the lotus position, sitting underneath the Bodhi tree, asking the great earth goddess to bear witness to the night of his enlightenment. These are all important symbols of our connection to this earth, to this living and breathing earth, the lotus, the tree, and the earth itself. So this is something we should also think about anytime we are practicing our yoga asana. As we go from downward facing dog to cat to cow to crow to locust to firefly to dragonfly, these aren't arbitrary names for the poses. We are ourselves encouraged to embody the energy of sentient beings on this earth, to remember this natural world that we are a part of. So when you are in a pose named after an animal, think about that animal. It's not just a convention why we're naming the poses as such. We are here to embody the earth energy and the manifestations of the earth goddess or the earth spirit. There's a famous story where Suzuki Roshi was asked, "What do you teach your students about higher states of consciousness?" And this is a common question and inquiry, primarily from people coming from the West who are deeply interested in spiritual attainment, who think that it's like karate class where you go from the blue belt to the brown belt to the black belt. Everyone wants the next thing and the next thing and the next, and to have greater levels of spiritual attainment. So it can become very intoxicating when you learn about the sequential meditative practices of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. But Suzuki Roshi did not take the bait, and he simply replied, I don't know anything about higher consciousness. I simply try to teach my students to hear the birds when they sing. Hmm. We have so much to learn from this earth, from our home. Notice I said we learn from the earth, not about it. This is a big difference. Another story about learning underneath a tree. The great Indian poet Rabindranath, I'm going to butcher this, Rabindranath Tagore, established a school near the city of Kolkata called Shanti Niketan, meaning House of Peace. There he held classes under the mango trees and said to his pupils, "You have two teachers. One is myself, your human teacher, and the other, the tree under which we sit." Tagore went on, "I can give you intellectual knowledge, but you can gain much experience by observing the trees. When knowledge and experience meet, wisdom is born." This is such a wonderful perspective. We are here to learn from the earth, from the trees and flowers and bees and birds. We're not here to learn about them, as we are told in our science classes, that humans have studied the earth from an observable distance, come up with certain truths, and that is what we are taught in our biology classes. But we are not here to observe the earth from a distance, but to come home to it and to find a sense of kinship and belonging with it, to recognize there is no separation between human and nature. We are a part of nature, and nature is a part of us. And when we are able to shift into this understanding of our underlying interconnectedness, our entire world shifts. And like Tagore, we suddenly are able to write amazing poetry expressing the intricacies of this connection. So Tagore wrote this: "The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and of death, in ebb and in flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment." Hmm. So often on yoga trainings, we will sing this beautiful song that goes, "Earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit." And it's so easy to interpret these lyrics metaphorically, that the earth is like our body, rather than see the truth of our interrelatedness and interconnectedness, that the earth is our body, that the fire is our breath, that the air is our spirit. The same inspiration that gives us oxygen to live is the same invigoration and infusion of spirit that exists behind all physical forms. And I think humans, we have so much hubris. I think in just a few decades from now, I'm not even giving it too much time because we have to come to this shift of consciousness very soon. Just a few decades from now, I hope we see our current speciesism as just as barbaric as the racism and sexism that we see from decades prior. The human species, we think we're above, better than, separated from all other species on this planet. And such better than perspective is what propels the consciousness that it creates so much destruction in this world. But it's the human being that feels isolated and separate from this world, while every creature on this earth knows that they belong. And again, we have so much to learn from these creatures, not about these creatures. There's a story of two old men who created a pact, and they agreed that whoever died first would try their absolute best to contact the other person from the afterlife. So eventually, one of them did die. And just a few weeks later, the friend that was alive received a phone call. He said, "Oh, Tim, is that you?" And his deceased friend, Tim, replied, "Yes, it is me." And he asked him, "Oh my gosh, what is the afterlife like? What is it like out there?" And he says, "Oh, we sleep in, we spend time in nature, we eat, we have sex, we fall asleep, we wake up, we go for a walk in the sunshine, we eat, we have sex, and we sleep again." And the man who was alive says, "Wow, that sounds fantastic. Heaven must be amazing." And the man on the line says, "Heaven? Oh no, I'm a moose in Wyoming." I think any listeners who own cats can probably resonate with this. Us human beings, we can get so caught up in our self improvement project, in our day to day projects. And as we sit there clacking away at our computer, the cat just looks at us and is like, "What in the world are you doing? Why are you worrying yourself so much with these silly projects when you could just curl up in the sun and purr?" A quote for you: "If you can start the day without caffeine, if you can get going without pep pills, if you can always be cheerful, ignoring aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be grateful for it, if you can understand when your loved ones are too busy to give you any time, if you can overlook when those you love take it out on you when, through no fault of yours, something goes wrong, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can ignore a friend's limited education and never correct them, if you can resist treating a rich friend better than a poor friend, if you can face the world without lies and deceit, if you can conquer tension without medical help, if you can relax without liquor, if you can sleep without the aid of drugs, if you can say honestly that deep in your heart you have no prejudice against creed, color, religion, or politics, then, my friend, you are almost as good as your dog." So that's the thing, folks. The answer is right here in front of us. We don't even have to learn it. It is actually our task to remember. And this is a crucial part of the spiritual path. Our practice is not one of gaining anything, but removing the veils of illusion. Enlightenment is nothing more than touching reality as it is. So, in order to touch reality as it is, we must remove the veils covering our own perceptions. This is why we have the cloud of unknowing, the cloud of forgetting, because unknowing, deconditioning, unlearning is a crucial part of the path. And we are here to remember what we already know and exactly what is here right now. Joy Harjo wrote this: "Remember the sky that you were born under, know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon, know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn, that is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away to night. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember the dance languages that life is. Remember. So too, that word sati, anapanasati, maranasati that we talked about earlier, that is most often translated as mindfulness, shares the same root as memory. In Sanskrit is smriti. Sati is the Pali. And we are here to remember, to remember what matters, to remember to live from intention, to remember to be present. I have found again and again, I can never have too many reminders to be present, to let go of the past, to release any attachment to any future outcome and the results of my own actions, to find a peace and presence that is available right here and right now. So when we think about coming home to the earth, coming back to the earth, remembering our connection to the earth, it's easy to think of this web of relationships as a web with very distinct nodes. Of course, there is you over here, breathing in the oxygen that came from a plant or the ocean over there. But we have to recognize that this is a web of relationships. This is relational, our interaction with the world around us. Things do not operate via cause and effect. If you want to look at cause and effect, you will see nothing but feedback loops, nothing but relationships amongst organisms. So, in our finding belonging in the here and now, that begins by seeing all our connection to all things in this web of life, by recognizing how our mind creates separation and this subject object duality. And it makes us feel like we are some stranger in a strange land, like we are some ego encapsulated in this bag of skin, like we just landed here from some strange and unknown universe. But we didn't come to this earth. We grew out of it. We are part of and a part in it. So Chief Seattle put it this way: humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. So we have to see life as relationship, that you are in a relationship with life right now. And our task is to make that relationship as loving as possible. And that starts by reciprocating all the love that this earth has already been giving us. Notice the apple tree as it creates 100 apples and releases them to the earth. The apple tree doesn't even use the apples themselves. The love we receive from the earth is unconditional. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the apples that we pluck off the tree, it is given to us with no expectation of return. So it is our human task to cultivate reciprocity, to cultivate a mutuality in this web of relationships with all sentient beings on this earth. And again, we can turn to D.H. Lawrence for his wisdom. It is a question practically of relationship. We must get back into relation, vivid and nourishing relation to the cosmos and the universe. For the truth is, we are perishing for lack of fulfillment of our greater needs. We are cut off from the great sources of our inward nourishment and renewal, sources which flow eternally in the universe. Vitally, the human race is dying. It is like a great uprooted tree with its roots in the air. We must plant ourselves again in the universe. Such beautiful imagery. I encourage you, next time you come into tree pose, to plant yourself again in the universe, to imagine your roots going deep into the earth. So, this web of relationships is what the poet David Whyte calls the conversational nature of reality, that everything in existence is in a constant conversation with everything else. And it's amazing what emerges from that conversation. We have sodium over here, chlorine over here. Separately, they are very distinct. Then they have a conversation with each other. And what emerges from that conversation is salt. And then what happens when we ingest that salt? It increases the conversation that our tongue has with our food, and things taste better. We could also say that all of life on this earth is an emergence of the conversation between the sun and the earth. Life is this conversation. Hydrogen and oxygen are having a conversation, and it sounds a lot like water. This is life. The bees are having conversations with the flowers. The birds are having conversations with each other. This is the conversational nature of reality, and our attempts to create an isolated and separate sense of self takes us out of the conversation. And we don't experience this web of relationship that binds us to all things on this earth. David Whyte says this: your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely, even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence, and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. Isn't that funny? All the creatures and birds of the world are unutterably themselves. The birds know their role in the universe. The cats and dogs know their role in the universe. Why is it that human beings don't understand why we are here? We find ourselves devoid of meaning and purpose because we have separated ourselves from this living and breathing earth. So, as we come back home to the earth, as we recognize this web of relationships, this connects us to earth as entity, to earth as spirit. You might have heard of this as Gaia, Mother Earth, Madre Tierra. This is the ultimate relationship. Seeing this world as the goddess, as the divine feminine, is the shift of perspective that we need in order to save this planet, in order to treat her right. Mother Earth is the ultimate bodhisattva, wanting happiness for all of her beings. And we can see this love that the mother gives to us and seek to give it back. From this perspective, what you call a birth is just moving from one womb to another, from the womb of your mother to the womb of the great mother of this earth. And when we die, we come back to the womb again. So this is so important if we are to save the world. We have to see it as the mother, as a spirit, as an entity. And this is one of the greatest tragedies of the evolution of religion in the human consciousness. When we started to put things in more and more of abstract terms. When you look at the history of how religion has evolved, thousands of years ago, it was always connected to the earth. There was the moon god, the god of fire, the god of rain, the god of the stars, Father Sun, and Mother Earth. All the entities that we worshiped were somehow and still connected to beings on this earth and this material reality. But at some point in history, things became more abstract, more separate. Suddenly, heaven wasn't this place that we are in right now. Eden wasn't this place that we are in right now, but a separate place, distinctly different. And then suddenly, the importance of being here on this planet became lessened. And that also happened with the divine. The divine no longer was this living and breathing earth, but some abstract entity out there. So our final task is to connect to divinity, connect to true divinity in the right way. Because God is not some wizard in the sky, not some old man with a beard looking down from a cloud. Now, I can't tell you what God is. No one can tell you what God is. It is up to you to find out for yourself. Recognizing that every human being desires to be part of something larger. A young child goes to her mother and asks, "Where did humans come from?" And the mother replies, "Oh, don't you know? As it says in the Bible, Adam and Eve were the first mother and father of all human species, and they gave birth to everyone that we know today." And the daughter says, "Huh, that's so interesting, because I asked Dad that same question, and he said we evolved from monkeys, and our ancestors were monkeys." And the mother looks at her daughter and says, "Ah, yes, you see, I was telling you about my side of the family, and your dad was telling you about his." The point is, we want to be part of something bigger, something larger. And that divine entity is the something bigger and something larger that we can connect to. But it does go beyond any conceptual thought. It is not something we can explain, not something we can force. But no doubt you have experienced this call to something deeper. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be listening to this talk. Rabia Basri was one of the first Muslim saints and one of the earliest Sufi mystics. At one point, she was asked, "If I turn toward God, will God turn toward me?" "No, never," she replied. "First, God has to look at you, and then you look at God." This is what is known as the turning of the heart. It happens through grace, where we are inexplicably awakened to a divine, multidimensional reality that is right here, a God that is everywhere. All we have to do is remove the veils of illusion. So you can't put the ocean into a thimble, but you can put a thimble into an ocean. And we are that thimble, and we can rest in this larger, ineffable ground of being, this ocean of being, recognizing it is the foundation of everything. As it says in A Course in Miracles, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. I'll say that again. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So you might ask, why should I cultivate this relationship with the divine? All I can say is it will help. It will help you greatly. Another story. A person is praying, "Dear God, so far today I've done all right. I haven't gossiped and I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been grumpy, nasty, or selfish, and I'm really glad of that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And from then on, I'm probably going to need a lot of help. Thank you. Amen." The point is, God is here to help. People think that God should help us by removing all challenges and tribulations, but the divine doesn't work that way. In the Eastern perspective, this life that we are in is the perfect balance of pleasure and pain. Enough happy and joyful times to make the sad and challenging times worth it. And it's those painful times, it's those times of darkness that give us the motivation to search for the light. We need suffering on the path of awakening. No mud, no lotus. So Thomas Keating put it this way: God has not promised to take away our trials, but to help us change our attitudes towards them. That is what holiness really is. In this life, happiness is rooted in our most basic attitude toward reality. For human beings, the most daunting challenge is to become fully human. For to become fully human is to become fully divine. The Spirit calls us to transformation of our innermost being, and indeed of all of our faculties, into the divine way of being and acting. Divine love picks us up when we sincerely believe nobody else will. We then begin to experience freedom, peace, calm, equanimity, and liberation from cravings. So, my friends, my dearest friends, dearly beloveds, we have come full circle. To become fully human is to become fully divine. So, in coming home to ourselves and coming home to the divine, we create a circle that meets. Hence the phrase, God's circle is everywhere, its center is nowhere. Or the center is everywhere, their circumference is nowhere. Same idea. In order to find the divine in everyone, we first find that divine spark within ourselves. This is how the mystics become so raving mad. They see the divine in everyone, and they just want to go running throughout the streets and say, "Wake up, everybody. You are it. We are what we seek. The divine is everywhere. Space is spirit. Tattvam asi. That art thou." Serena Sagadatta put it this way: in seeking, you discover that you are neither the body nor the mind, and the love of the self in you is for the self in all. Okay, friends. All of these words are just fingers pointing at the moon. And some hear that phrase and think, well, the finger must be useless in that case. But it is pointing you in the right direction. Michel L'Infante wrote this poem: remember that to have the eyes of an artist, that can be enough. The ear of a poet, that can be enough. The soul of a human just pointed in the direction of the divine, that can be more than enough. I tell you this to remind myself. Every gesture is an act of creation. Even empty spaces and silence can be the wings and voices of angels. Even empty spaces and silence can be the wings and voices of angels. So, my friends, let us sit in silence for a few more minutes to see how even empty spaces and silence can be the wings and voices of angels. Few things resemble God so much as silence, says John O'Donohue. By resting in silence, we are resting in a larger presence, here to see the love in ourselves, is the same love for the self in all. And in this moment, let your heart turn. The soul of a human just pointed in the direction of the divine. That can be more than enough. Just turning in the direction of love, an ecstatic, overflowing, divine, ecstatic, burning love that lies at the holy and hidden heart of every human being, lit by the divine. And that burning love and light in me honors and recognizes the burning love and light in you, for it is the same light. Here we are in different lamps, but the light is the same. Namaste.